Hello, my name is Karen Williams, and during this video I'll be addressing the transport of horses to slaughter from the US to Canada, along with the many welfare issues and problems this industry faces. The problem derives from unwanted horses, in which is an ongoing issue in the US, putting the industry under increased stress. These horses are often riding horses, former racehorses, wild horses and foals born from the pregnant mare urine industry. They also include overpopulated feral horses in the US, where in 2007 there was around 21,000 unadoptable feral horses kept in Bureau of Land Management funded long-term sanctuaries, where only 9,000 of these horses were in the BLM adoption section. It's estimated there are around 125,000 unwanted horses in the US annually. Although efforts are made to rehome, retrain and repurpose these horses, the harsh reality is that a large number of these horses end up in abattoirs and are slaughtered for the meat industry. In 2007, approximately 58,000 horses were processed for meat in the US and 35,000 were exported to Canada for processing. These horses were transported from 16 states in the US. In 2009, 93,947 horses were slaughtered in Canada, and 85% of this meat was exported to France, Switzerland and Belgium and Japan. Over 60,000 of these horses were imported and transported from the USA. A study by the Unwanted Horse Coalition in 2009 stated the horse industry would need approximately a minimum of around $25.7 million just to look after the horses being rejected from rescue, retirement and retraining facilities. Therefore, in some ways, slaughter may be the best option. However, these horses are travelled extremely long distances under awful conditions in which their welfare is hugely impacted. Due to increasing numbers of unwanted horses in the US, horses sent to slaughter is an ongoing issue in which not only needs addressing, but new solutions made to improve the treatment of these animals, in which will be addressed within this video. In 2007, a new legislation was passed to close plants for slaughtering horses in the US, ending US horse processing. This increased horse exports to Canada and Mexico, where horse processing remains legal. This ban caused an increase in unwanted horses due to reduced buyers for slaughter horses, also causing an increase in neglect, as owners are now faced with disposal costs and difficult decisions on euthanizing horses. This increased transport of horses across the borders of the US, impacting horse welfare by increasing the distance the horses travel. Current regulations allow horses to be travelled for up to 36 hours without food, any form of water and rest. This puts the horse at risk of extreme fatigue, dehydration and injury. A paper by Stull in 1999 stated that horses can lose up to 4% of body weight during commercial transport to slaughter. This will compromise the horse's immunophysiological responses, for example, may increase cortisol levels, in which has been seen to be a mediator of stress-associated immune suppression. This hugely impacts horses' welfare, shown in a study by Stull et al. In 2008, who also stated that providing a 12-hour rest break would allow sufficient time for horses to replenish and recover. Therefore, these long periods are an unnecessary impact on horses' welfare. So, horses transported often have low body condition scores and suffer some sort of injury, all of which decrease fitness for travel before added stress of the long journeys. Horses are also often transported in trucks designed for cattle or pigs, in which don't allow enough room for them to stand at a natural angle. They are also crowded together and floors are slippery with no bedding, therefore it's not unusual for horses to arrive injured or in some cases dead before arrival to the slaughter plants, showing how extreme the conditions really are. This close density of the horses while travelling causes increased risk of falling, as well as inability to stand up if they do fall. Due to having no room, horses do not have space to brace themselves, also predisposing them to injuries while travelling. A study by Roy et al. In 2012 used infrared thermography to detect bruising in horses following transport to slaughter. The occurrence of bruising on post-mortem analysis was 54%. Another study by Grandin et al. In 1999 showed characteristic patterns of 51% of carcasses bruised were due to bites or kicks, with fighting being a major cause of the injuries during transport, causing major stress to the horses on top of the transport stress. The validity of shipper certificates is also often unknown or invalid, even though falsification of documents is a criminal offence in which may result in fines of up to $10,000 or imprisonment. However, due to lack of funding, limited inspection authority and lack of staff, shipper certificates are often overlooked, therefore awful conditions are also overlooked. Roy and Cochrane in 2012 found journey duration could only be obtained from 20% of certificates, which also failed to mention fitness of the horse to travel. This implies the journey duration would have taken longer than usual due to unrecorded rest periods, again further impacting the horse's welfare, on top of having a low body condition score, which would have impaired their welfare also. Journeys are often seen to be significantly shorter than estimated on Google Maps for the declared duration, again proving unrecorded periods where the journey would have been considerably longer than stated. Lastly, stalls within the slaughterhouses are often too wide for the horses, allowing slight movement. Due to horses' fight or flight instincts, they have instinctive panic and escape desires, causing them to shake their heads chaotically, hitting their heads on the frames of the stalls, causing further injury, along with making it increasingly difficult to stun the horses, where horses are often not stunned properly to death before being processed. This fight or flight instinct could also be a cause of fighting during transport, caused from extreme stress and as a response of the inhumane transport conditions where the horses want to escape in panic. There is also added stress on horses potentially being exposed to extreme cold temperatures, pressing stress on their thermoregulatory systems as they would not have been acclimated. Due to fasting also from the already long journey, horses will be at increased risk of stress, compromising their immune system, increasing risk of dehydration further, and due to this, increasing risk to diseases. This could further have a negative impact economically on profits for meat processors due to contamination of diseases as well as bruising on the meat produce. Needs and opinions of individuals may conflict, as doing what's best for a horse's welfare may not always be possible or the best option. One barrier of people choosing ethical, rational behaviours is cognitive dissonance. This is where someone has an unpleasant mental discomfort from holding two contradictory values. Therefore, they are then motivated to avoid and justify their behaviour by being ignorant to facts and focus only on information that justifies the behaviour. This is often seen in the transport of horses to slaughter industry, where although we know the slaughter of horses may not always be the best or most humane option, we do it anyway and transport horses in awful conditions. However, to reduce this conflict, we then hire people to kill these horses so we don't have to see the poor environments and conditions these horses face on travel to and within the slaughter plants. Before making informed decisions, it's important to consider all ethical theories and values, weighing up the relative importance of each. A contractarian believes in morality based on agreement. They believe everyone has their own opinion are entitled to these, however, along with the cooperation of others, which then leads to agreements and creating obligations in which we must stick to. Therefore, a contractarian would agree with the transport of horses to slaughter as long as the basic needs are provided and transport is done by legislation. So the horses involved must be taken care of adequately if we want to use them as a product of meat. However, they may disagree with the industry if the care of the horses is done against legislation, which it often is. For example, exceeding transport journey times stated within regulations. Stakeholders in which may take on this theory are the owners in which sell their horses, as well as the people within the slaughter packs themselves. Next, the utilitarian believes in creating the greatest good for the greatest number, where actions that have adverse effects on well-being can be justified if leading to an overall increase in well-being. They take into account the extent of impact also. Therefore, a utilitarian thinker may agree with the transport of horses to slaughter if the welfare is considered and that animals are cared for correctly during the process. Under the conditions the horses face during transport, as previously stated within this video, a utilitarian would disagree with the industry, as the suffering the horses undergo does not justify the outcome. People with this belief may be the consumers of horse meat themselves. Lastly, a deontological thinker believes that the end does not justify the means, and that no good results justify bad actions. They're very ethical thinkers, therefore would not agree with the transport of horses to slaughter, as the suffering they endure during the process does not justify the end product of eating the meat produced and sold as a result. They believe animals have inherent rights in which people must respect. People with a deontological viewpoint may be the public in which oppose of the slaughter of the horses as a whole. Many people would be affected if the brutal truth of the treatment of horses was exposed to the public, or if slaughter was banned altogether. Therefore, creating solutions to improve conditions are a much better approach. If the public were aware of the issues as presented in this video, the industry's social license to operate could be hugely at risk, which in turn could affect the livelihoods of many stakeholders. For example, if the racing industry disclosed the amount of horses sent to slaughter, which is estimated at around 10,000 horses annually from the thoroughbred racing industry, breeders, trainers, bookies, jockeys and the media that covers and documents race days are all at risk of impacts on their jobs. This could also affect those connected to the slaughterhouse, where some Canadian plants employ up to 155 hourly workers. Another solution could be to improve legislations and regulations on transport, providing clearer guidance on the transport to slaughter to prevent the suffering horses face. This could include reducing journey times from the current 36-hour rule, including rest breaks and allowing the segregation of horses during transport. The Wheeled Horse Welfare provides a dossier of evidence to support changes to EU Council regulation for the long-distance transport of live equids to slaughter in Europe. This includes practical solutions to improve health and welfare of horses, including allowing maximum journey times of 9 to 12 hours with rest breaks and offering horses food and water every 4.5 hours. This contrasts the current journey time of 36 hours allowed in the transport of horses from the USA to Canada. A solution similar to the Wheeled Horse Welfare dossier to the EU could be implemented to improve transport times. The paper by Roy and Cockham in 2015 also suggests that further resources and effort could be used by regulatory authorities to ensure documentation is completed properly to ensure appropriate monitoring of horse transport. This could help to monitor journey patterns and ensure compliance with the regulations, which could decrease long journey times, reducing fatigue and risks associated with transport, all in which will improve the welfare of horses transported to slaughter. It's clear that improvements need to be made to improve the transport of horses to slaughter, or horses will continue to suffer within this industry through the inadequate conditions of the transport to slaughter and improving regulations to prevent people involved going against legislations as they do. A minimum body score for the horses prior to transport could also ensure strength and fitness required to endure the travel are met. This could reduce casualties and suffering during the long-haul transport journeys. However, these changes and solutions would all have to be made slowly to ensure stakeholders involved in the industry aren't receiving too much of the negative effects from involvement within the industry.